The thing is still spinning. So, hi everybody. So, my name is Elaine Duff. Welcome to celebrating the brand ambassador. We are now live on Facebook, and I'm here with Aleka Ross and Daniella Solano. Welcome, ladies. Thank you so much for being here with me today. I'm really excited to dig in. So, I always tell everybody, like, my first question is always this. So, and really feel the need to go into detail about what your responsibilities are, because I know they're elaborate. But that's okay, because I think people need to have a better understanding of how much one job can encompass under one little title. All right. So, Daniella, I'm going to start with you. If you're outside and I never know when you're going to get, a car is going to go by or whatever. So let's start with you. What is your current position and what are your responsibilities?
So first off, thank you for having me and thank you for everyone tuning in. Just like Elaine said, I'm actually outside. I'm going to be hosting a staff training shortly. So this really shows that, like, with being a brand ambassador, everything can change on a dime's notice. But my responsibilities vary a little bit. So it's everything from education to being the liaison between the distillery and our local commercial team, as well as our distributing partners. And then on top of that, I am the guardian of our private select barrels, where Maker's Mark, our barrel selection is very different and a bit more involved than, say, doing something with our friends at Knob Creek or Basil Hayden. So that's something that, like, they've definitely made us the guardians of that program. I also get to do a lot of really great events that not only involve, drinking and eating, but our goal, moving into this, I hate saying this, but this new normal is that we want to go beyond just the liquid in the bottle. We like to take people, is it learning about the water systems that flow throughout New York? Is it learning how to move our bodies in a different way that we don't end up feeling like we are old bartenders by 35? And also we get to do fun, like treat yourself days, where I get to bartend for you and take you on a relaxing adventure. So in a nutshell, it's a lot of education. It's a lot of harboring relationships, and then also running the private selection program.
Wow, that is a lot. There's like half fun,
yes.
But even fun is work because there's so many details of, like, putting events together and inviting people and coordinating all the details. And then you got the other part, which is sales, which is, picking the right accounts for your barrel program and selling that in and what that looks like. And also you bring people to the distillery, right?
Right. And so we just got the green light. We're going to, we have actually just started to take people down there. And I don't know if many people know this. I've worked with other brands and other suppliers before. And the big thing is the education and the training that's provided by your company. I will say this: Makers goes above and beyond to be a part of the team. You actually go down to the distillery for 2 weeks and learn every single job and really get involved with the production and get to know the people who work at the distillery. We're located in Loretto, Kentucky, and it's a town of 400. 220 people work at the distillery from Loretto. So that's something to say. Like, it's a big deal and an essential part of that town and that community.
I had no idea it was that small.
Wow. Oh yeah, very tiny. Wow. There's 3 restaurants in the whole town, if that. The town is lovely. The people are amazing. Their passion for Maker's Mark, the quality of the product, and also them wanting to open their doors to everyone and anyone that walks through has just been amazing. And it makes me want to take that same energy and that, that Southern hospitality and really bring that forth into New York.
That's amazing. And we definitely could always use some good Southern hospitality here in New York City. That's one thing. And for anybody watching, just so you know, you can chat if you want to, put a comment or ask me questions. All right. So, and thank you, Vance, for tuning in. So, Aleka, tell us what is your, and also Daniella's title, by the way, is not brand ambassador. It's New York Diplomat. It's a little different than brand ambassador.
Yes.
And Aleka, you also, because your job's you're not a brand ambassador, you're a brand development manager. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So my job, thank you to Elaine for having me on. It's been such a nice journey to be able to connect with people virtually and some that I would probably never meet in person. So thank you for that. I, very similar to what Daniella kind of does, distributor management, account management. So I'm seeing accounts every day, about Tuesday through Friday. I also have the luxury of tasting accounts on spirits for doing their in-store tastings. I'm in charge of kind of vetting sponsorships locally. I also do trade and influencer engagement, education. So anything that has to do with our brands in our market, I'm kind of the go-to person for that. And then I was recently given our Holding Co. Spokesperson position. So I'll be representing the company, our wholly owned brands in the future, doing fun distillery tours when our distillery starts to be consumer facing. So I'm excited about that part.
That's fantastic. And tell us what brands, like it's because Holding's got a really interesting portfolio.
Yeah, we do. So we started off with our heritage brands, Old Potrero and Junipero or Unipero. Those two brands really helped forge the way for the craft distillery scene. In the mid-90s, Fritz Maytag and Bruce were concocting up these two spirits in the basement of the Anchor Brewery. And it wasn't until about, 10, 15 years later that people really were like, okay, let's join the train. And so we have those heritage brands. And then we started importing brands like Luxardo, Nika, Cavalon, really kind of, I always like to say we really like to focus on the premium heritage brands from around the world. And so we're very fortunate. I always say, any question that you have for me, I can track it to the straight distiller within an email. That's how close we are to the source.
That's really incredible. And I think it's such a great resource. And I know Daniella can do that too. I know they have that connection to the distiller, which is an incredible connection, because when you're ever getting, doing a presentation and somebody throws out something, and you're like, you know what? I can text the distiller. I don't have the answer to that. It really does impress people. Have you ever had to do that, either one of you?
Yes.
And then they get the same answer sometimes too.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think my favorite thing about like someone who has a question that perhaps maybe you don't know the answer to, being able to work for not just a brand, but a brand that's like, hey, just like you said, like I can text Denny or I can text Jane. I might not get a response immediately, but we have that access and that ability. And working for brands that want to be completely transparent is absolutely fantastic. It's not something that you always get to see a lot of the times, or, especially with newer brands that are popping up, or some of the craft brands, it is great to be able to see brands that, from like suppliers like Junipero, one of my favorite gins actually. Having that access is like imperative to like the success of our industry, and also, showing people that we're not just promo models. Because I don't know if this is something I run into, like, oh, do you work for XYZ agency? I was like, nope, I actually work directly for the distillery.
I a former promo model, and so was Aleka, and I realized it was like, yep, I totally like, no, I have transcended that. It was nice. It was good money when I did it. I loved it, but now I'm here now in my career. But thank you so much for putting me in that place.
It's so true. It's so true.
Yeah, and me too. I love Junipero, and I think Aleka, I think I told you this story, how the first time I came across it, I was in Aspen Food and Wine, and a gentleman, I was there with Tanqueray 10, and he loved and Ciroc, because Ciroc, which was an interesting brand to launch, and working within the craft spirits industry, because there it was like a rock, and it's made from grace, and this is before Diddy. When it was just, it really was an artisanal brand. But yeah, that was an interesting conversation. I was not the cool kid in the store. But this gentleman came over to me and he told me about Junipero, and he was like, and we made a trade. He really wanted, we had these really great plastic martini glasses. And at the end of this thing, and he was a taxi cab driver in Aspen, and he said, if you give me the box of the martini cups glasses at the end, whatever you have left over, I will send you a bottle of Junipero. And he's had to drive to Denver to go get it. So like that's how much he loved this gin, and he did. Like I gave him all my glasses.
Shut up!
A month later, a bottle of Junipero gin landed in my mail.
You just thought of our new marketing thing. We'll drive for gin.
He's like I literally, they don't carry it here in Aspen. I have to drive to Denver to get, which is like if you've ever done it through the mountains, it's about a 4-hour drive. It's not short.
It's not short, and it's scary.
It is scary. And that flight from Denver to Aspen, if you've ever done that, it's terrifying because you hit air pockets and you're on a tiny little plane and you just drop. It's terrifying. But Aspen Food and Wine is a lot of fun. And one day I hope to get back there. All right. So I want to talk about Aleka, your job. You're a brand development manager, right? So which is multifaceted, as you mentioned. You have lots of different things. You're in the field. You also have to manage the distributor and make sure your brands stay top of mind. Because as you said, you do have some small craft brands. Like they're very unique. They're not ones that everybody knows all the time. And distributors, that can be a problem for distributors because they're not really sure how to explain them and how to talk about them. So I'd really like to break down, it's a really important role that you have. So like how you kind of work with the distributor and how you kind of keep your brands top of mind and, why it's such an important role.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm fortunate in my role that I still am a salesperson. So I can still think like a salesperson. How do I want that information access to me? How easily is it access to me? Can I grab that information? And so first, that's kind of like the first part of how I approach them. How can I distill the information down in a way they can grab it easily? One way is a simple newsletter. A created one has all the links, all of the drinking days that we have, any kind of incentive that they have going on. It can be seen right there in their palm of their hand. And then if they need to refer to anything, there's links them to our sell sheets and our website. So really trying to condense and give them all of the information, since it is a lot that I want to give them in a timely manner. Another way is literally just connecting with that sales rep. They are all so different and they're all so dynamic. And so if I can get a chance to have a work with, like I have later today, to really figure out what works in their world, what works for them, and what they're comfortable with selling. You'd be surprised just asking them a couple questions. What's your favorite food? What do you usually do on the weekends? How that can kind of really zero in, and then they become champions of one brand. Then you choose another sales rep, become a champion of that brand. And when you have so many of them, if you get them all on board, you really can kind of move the needle in a longer way with really just listening and giving them all the information that they need in a timely manner.
No, I think that's great. Making your sales reps advocates for your brands. And because you have such a big portfolio, narrowing it down and figuring out which brands within the portfolio connects with that sales rep and then the accounts they're going to is such a great way, because they're not going to use all of them, right? Not everybody.
Oh my gosh. And you get tempted to, because my first couple of months in the job, I would go into accounts with like 2 12-bottle bags and be like, I'm ready. Because I couldn't narrow it down. I'm like, but what if they want to mix with the Luxardo and they want to do this?
We've all done it. I used to be the portfolio brand ambassador, and I used to do the same thing. I'd be like, this is all my brands. And they'd be like, eyes rolling and knocking your head. And they're like, oh my God, I hate this person so much.
I worked on a large whiskey and scotch portfolio, and walking through New York with like 8 bottles in my backpack, I kid you not, like I almost fell over walking up the subway stairs. I was like, you know what? Let's streamline this. What do you need? How can let's not bring everything to you. Tell me what you need, or I'll tell you what's the best.
Yeah. It's asking those questions, right? It's like asking those questions. And sometimes it's sitting down before the sales rep, before you have a work with the day before, like, hey, can we just catch up? Let's feel like we have a big portfolio. Let's narrow it down. Where are we going? So I can at least look it up and I'll give you a come up decision. This is what I'm thinking. What do you think? And then so we're not bringing too many things at once, if that's a possibility, because it's just too much.
And everyone's not going to be excited about your brands like you are. So
No, they really are not. Danielle, your job is New York Diplomat, which of
so, and I'll talk about that for a minute too, because everyone's probably like, what do you mean diplomat? Like, do I work for the consulate of Maker's Mark? Yes, in theory. So with Maker's Mark, because we were built not by our marketing, but by our story and our dedication to really having a flavor vision in mind, really sticking to that. We were established in 1953 by Bill and Margie, and they always wanted to create the distillery as a home for their favorite friends and consumers to come down and really get involved and be a part of our family and get to see the home of Maker's Mark. So what they ended up doing was created, and I believe this program rolled out late 80s, early 90s. It's called the Maker's Mark Ambassadors. So you can actually sign up. They're there to give you a bit more information about Makers, take you behind the scenes. You get a placard with your name is actually on a barrel. But not only that, we create special events specifically for these people who've taken the time to be a part of our program. So we send out birthday cards, Christmas cards. They're going to be the first people to know of our new releases and launches. It's a pretty awesome program that we have. So where it comes to my roles and responsibilities, what do I do? And that, again, going back to education, being influential, being, a champion for our bartenders and for our friends working in, all of our liquor and package stores. Our founder's great grandson says it best that if it weren't for the people who were just constantly championing at the stores and filling our drizzly orders and, having all the things available in all sizes, us as suppliers, we wouldn't have made it to where we are today.
That is so true.
That and we're also working on how do we re-engage with that it's not just someone an order taker, they're just as important as our friends in bars like Clover Club or Landa, getting them excited.
I think that's really, really important. But I also know, for you, one of the things, I think that's a great point, because you do have to thank all the people. Without them, none of us would have jobs. The bartenders didn't buy our products. If the off-premise people didn't bring in our packages and help us with our floor stacks and do what they do. And surviving this year is the reason, all the hard work they did this year is the reason why we all have jobs this year.
Yes.
We all have jobs now.
Very thankful for that.
But one of the things that you mentioned to me yesterday is working with such an established brand, there are disadvantages and advantages of it. And I definitely empathize with you, because I experienced this when I worked for Diageo, especially in 2005 when the craft spirit movement kind of kicked off. I was amazed at how many people took the brands out and they were like, nope, we don't want any of these, no Tanqueray, no Bullet, just take them all out. We just want the small guys. So tell me how for you, even today, what are the advantages for the brand? Because it probably opens doors, and the disadvantages and things you have to overcome.
I think especially, for New York, it's always what's cool? What's the next cool thing? What's the next cool kid? What's the next trend? And so for some people, Maker's Mark is one of those brands that they're like, oh, it's been around forever. They're, it's a traditional brand. And I think people kind of forget sometimes of because of our tradition and because of, how we decided to build our product out, it still stands up time and time again. But it is a lot of we call it converting a critic, hitting someone who has decided that I want to go with, the small craft brewer in upstate New York, and God bless them. I love that there has to be little guys and there has to be big guys. There is room for all of us to play in the sandbox, but it's talking a little bit about because we've been doing this for, over 60 years, we have kind of locked down consistency and really knowing, what are we looking to achieve and why. So it's a lot of kind of bringing people back into the fold. And lucky for us and our innovation team, we have created some line extensions of different explorations of proof to show that okay, we're not just Makers, original, and not just Makers original. Again, so thankful that I get to be a part of their story, but that we do have more going on, and we are, kind of exploratory. So either there's a lot of people who are I remember my first experience and they love it. And then some of, my accounts are oh, I'm not interested in it because it's such a large brand. And that's where I come in and I get to say okay, we're a large brand, but everything is done from our, couple 100-acre farm. Every bottle is hand dipped. Every label is hand printed. So if we want to talk about craft, without brands like Maker's Mark, craft distilleries wouldn't exist.
Mm-hmm.
there's got to be room for everybody. I think having those esoteric brands or trying something new or exciting is wonderful, but it's also important to have those legacy brands that did help create, the bourbon industry. A lot of us, we forget that premium whiskey is not even of legal age to drink. That really didn't start happening until the mid 2000s. That existed, but there wasn't a drive or a need for it. So this is something new that we're really going for.
No, absolutely. And it is. It's like the places like Maker's Mark, kind of led the way. Buffalo Trace, they led the way so that everybody else, and they kind of gave like a benchmark for everybody else to kind of follow. And they are also a comfort brand. It's like if I walk into a bar, I see you have Maker's Mark. It's like, sometimes I don't want to do all the work. We work in this industry, and I'm always interested in trying, different things. But as a consumer, it's like just seeing a brand that I recognize and know, and I can be just like, I see that up there. And I just, I don't want to think, I just want, that brand that I know, and I know it's good. I know it's consistent. It's been made the same way all the time. So I do think there's room in the sandbox for both. And I know you also have the same thing. Like you have very small brands. So, but some of them are well known, like Luxardo and Alchero, but still you have to do that extra selling. So what's the advantage sometimes to having?
Yeah. And the advantage, I will say, to Daniella's point is we are so fortunate to have these big distilleries that were able to stand the test of time, and they paved the way for us, especially with our whiskeys and our Irish whiskeys. We always say, if it wasn't for the Jamesons and the Bushmills, the Dingles couldn't be around. So I totally agreed with that point. I'm really lucky that since we have an international portfolio, one thing is I don't maybe sometimes get to have the funds to do these big events and the build outs that I want, but I get connected in different ways. And one of them being like working with diplomats when I was in DC and working with the embassies. I mean, the fact that I have a Taiwanese whiskey, a liquor from, Curacao, I'm going to you'd be surprised where this liquid takes you. And then being able to parlay that opportunity into something bigger that you probably wouldn't have been able to if I worked for a bigger brand. That is something that I find that's really nice and unique about the position. Another thing, it's really nice sometimes to have awesome programs. I can go into account. I know I have 30 accounts to execute a $50 whatever, but sometimes it costs me very limiting. So it's really nice to go in and say, hey, what are you guys working with? How can I build around you? And that way, each Cavalon or each Old Pulteney experience, the juice is going to bring it all together, but it can be different upon each account. And so there's so many vastness. And then one thing I love about being able to work for a smaller or not as well-known portfolio is I can work with a bunch of my friends. When you are with the bigger brand, sometimes you can't work with this competitor, but us smaller guys, we get to pool our resources together. So I'm able to work with a lot of the other craft distilleries and put ourselves, rise all of our ships at once. So it's real nice to do that.
No, which is great. Actually, here in New York, I know 3 brand ambassadors who work together. Rocky's Milk Punch, my girlfriend Tracy, who works for Empress Gin, and Matt, who works for
Republic Restoratives in DC.
What is it saying?
Republic Restoratives, the Civic Vodka. Okay,
different brand, which is escaping me. But they go to accounts together. They're part-time brand ambassadors, and they actually go to accounts together. And they, they'll do cocktails together, but they pool each other's money and they support the account, so they each have like $75 or whatever it is, and they can all put it together. And I thought that was really clever.
I think that's awesome. Even as someone I do work for a larger brand, the one thing, like you just said, Aleka, we want our ships to rise at once. I'll pair up with someone who does a liqueur, and I'll be like, let's create a cocktail strategy together. Let's hit these accounts together. And I really look at it, especially now and what we're facing and the reopening and constant change of legislation, especially I know in California and New York got hit pretty hard with that, is let's work together and working smart and not hard, and partnering is a lot of fun.
No, I think it's such a great way of doing it because it is, it's also because it's such a lonely job. right?
Yes.
You're out a lot by yourself. You kind of like hitting bars and talking to people by yourself. And not every account you know the bartenders. So you might be there, or the person you know is working behind the bar. So you're kind of there at the bar by yourself and you're going. So to have somebody else that you can kind of partner with. And somebody made a great, last week I was talking to a couple of brands, and they were saying, it also takes the burden off the bartender if you have somebody else to talk to, so they don't feel like they have to constantly engage with you, which I thought was a really good point. It's actually nice to have somebody there so they don't have to feel like they have to constantly come over and be your host. So it's also nicer for them. So it's kind of a win-win for everybody. All right. So now, I really do want to talk about, because both of you ladies had very interesting, and the reason I brought this up is because I think a lot of people get into the brand ambassador role and, they're not really sure. Sometimes they just take the job because they just want the brand ambassador job. And then two, there is so many different options and different ways companies work. I've interviewed now, I don't know, almost 60 brand ambassadors and over 25 different companies. And, they're all so different and unique. And some roles are just not the same, right? You're working with multiple different brands. Your goals are really intense. And it's like, the person who came up with the program, you're like, do you really know what you're doing? You're not really sure. But that being said, you both had, I'm not saying that's true of anything that you guys were doing, but you both had more intense jobs before that. So I just want to explain, because I think you're both much happier in where you are now. Not that you have anything bad to say about the old company, but tell me a little bit more about, so people can see the different ways things work and why your new job is so appealing. So, Aleka, I'll start with you, because you had a pretty intense role, which I actually helped create the program before I left. I just created the training program, didn't create how it was being executed. So I will not take blame for that. Before I left Diageo, I helped create the training for it. So it was the Activation Army, which in its own name says a lot about the program. So
right, I know. First sign, if you see a military reference in a title, run.
So true. So true.
Yeah, I think what I've taken from all of those hard, I would say challenging and learning experiences in the past is, how can I sharpen those skills that challenged me so much? And then it also kind of challenged me in my position in the industry. Like, do I still want to do this? If I do want to do this, how is it going to look going forward? When I was in the Activation Army, I was seeing like 30 accounts a week, activating Monday through Friday. You would see accounts during the day, and then you would go and be in accounts, spending that money that you have programmed on at night, plus doing your admin work. So it was just a lot for someone who just didn't have that bandwidth, and had kind of already like established myself a little bit at that time. If you're coming out of college, oh my God, that would be like the best job ever.
Yeah.
But, absolutely. But like I said, what I learned is I really learned how to hone in certain sales skills for this job now. I learned how to work smarter and not harder. Learned how to, if that person is wasting my time, it's cool for them, and it's okay to lose that sale on to the next. And so that's one thing that I learned what a powerhouse, what it takes to be a powerhouse. But do you want that? How do you see yourself in this industry? And so I've been very fortunate enough to where I've been able to hone in with Hoteling and kind of get best of both worlds. Don't get me wrong, it's still a little overwhelming, but it's overwhelming to where I can manage it.
No, I think those are such great points, because it is, you should take, and I love your positive attitude, and I know what hardworking women we all are, right? So, and we know how to hustle. To take the best of it. It's like, what did I learn from that situation? What can I pull away from that and then utilize going forward? And you're right. Sometimes it is about this stage in your life, right? So I did a strange career move where I became a brand ambassador and I became a mom almost like simultaneously, which I do not recommend anyone, because it would have been a great job. Like I used to have to go to Montauk, and the only way I could do it to go visit my accounts, it was before Montauk was cool. So it was like 2007, 2008. It wasn't really like, there was no surf lodge. There was no shit happening down there. So I'd have to take my girlfriends with me so they could babysit my daughter because my ex-husband worked in the restaurant business. So if I was young and single, or at least not a mom, I would have been loving it. I would have been living in the Hamptons all summer, out in Montauk, partying like a rock star. My friends would have been out with me. It would have been fucking awesome. But instead, I was leaving my daughter with my girlfriend so they could like hang out with her at the beach, so I could go out in Montauk by myself, which is not fun by any means. So I could go visit my account. So it is about the right stage in your life and what role it is. But I did learn a lot. I learned how good my friends are babysitting my kid. Also, I learned about balance, and I realized I had to change my job to make it work for me. And I eventually did. Diageo created a bar, and then I started working behind that. And people started coming to me, and the accounts came to me. So I didn't have to go to them anymore. And it's helped me now. I'm like the consultant for everybody who has a baby now in our industry. Every woman's like, Elaine, how did you make this work? And what did you do? Which I love. I love being that person. So, and now my daughter's 16, so I can do whatever I want now because she doesn't care. She's like, woo. But anyway, so it is about finding in the right stage in your life and the right career, and then pulling things away from it. I think is really, really important. Daniela, I know for you, you also had a really intense job. Like you had a huge portfolio.
I had a huge portfolio, and this was pre-pandemic. And I think when I took the job, like going straight from bartending, kind of jumping into the role, a lot of the times as young bartenders, I was 30. I think I was 30 when I started, which I felt like I'd been behind the bar for 15 years in various states, in various types of accounts, dive bars, fine dining, nightclubs, you name it, I probably worked there. There's never anyone who actually tells you like, hey, there's not a end date to when you have to stop bartending, but also there is no rule book to becoming a brand ambassador. And I think that is the one thing that I struggled with on the first month, I would say, was like, what is my role and what exactly am I supposed to be doing? On top of that, I had 9 different brands over 3 different categories that each had a minimum of like 100 SKUs because some of these brands were built in 1823, 1824. So we had, those 50-year-old single malts. We had a 12-year-old. We had non-age statement. We had releases only available to Tokyo. It was kind of figuring out how do I do this in a way that makes the most sense for me? I loved being behind the bar because there was that security of that minimum of 3 feet. Mm-hmm. And so it was different to be on that other side. And also, how do I work Monday through Friday and then have to go out every single night? So I have to be the professional. I have to be the hostess. I have to be the most fun person in the room. And I think it took having to be stuck home for, 4 months straight and not being able to leave the house. I was like, I don't want to be all of those things. What I need to do is look at it, what I'm really good at. Am I a great hostess? Am I a better salesperson? And kind of narrowing down what makes sense for me and creating my role for my lifestyle. Yeah. I think today will be a great testament. One thing about me is I love to be out and I love to be a part of education. And so I'm really bad at saying no. So someone's like, hey, but that's why they pick us. But you know, for anyone out there who's like, I'm ready to transition into brand work, like, I love that. I highly recommend while you're doing that, while you're like, this is what I want to do, these are the brands I want to work for, reach out to people who work for those brands, work for, who have not small, but like more craft, kind of global brands. Talk to people who have domestic brands, like really get an idea from everybody because everybody has their own experience. Some people have a mix of sales and education. Some people are the hostess and really just kind of go from state to state and get to, really have these big experientials and other, people are all about the relationship. So it's an ebb and flow and it changes. Tomorrow they can tell me I have a new way of working and I would not be surprised.
No, I think those are all really great points because it is about deciding what you want your life to be. What do I want my every week to be? Because it's a big difference. So like, do I want to be out in the bars every week and hitting accounts? As an entrepreneur, it's like I have to think that all the time. I get different clients and I realize, this role. If I work with this person, this is what this is going to require, and I don't want to do that. Like I'm trying to find my life now that I can work from anywhere. I love to travel. I love to speak trade shows. I love education. I love doing things like this. And I'm really trying to my life around that. And every once in a while I do things where like I'm back in the streets and I'm doing some, but very short projects. Like people ask me, they're like, Elaine, I'd love to hire you. I know you'd be good at this. I'm like, yeah, I don't want to do that. Like, I don't want to be on the street all day long and hitting accounts and things like that. I'll do it for like a couple of weeks, but all the time, that's not my lifestyle anymore. But you do have to say this. So it is great advice to talk to people who work for the company. Like, what is it like working here? What are your daily role? Like, it says this is my job description. Is that really what I do? Because somebody in marketing wrote that. They don't really know what the fuck to do. They just don't.
I think that's a great point. And not only like, what are my roles, but what is the culture of the company? Like, don't give me the fluff that, when you're here, your family, endless breadsticks and salad. But like, what is it like when things are good? And tell me about when things are bad. Like, it's not just sunshine and rainbows. Like, we have strict deadlines, or, we have, at the end of the day, it is about depletion. So it's getting an oversight of the good and the bad. And can you deal with that? Is that something that you want to take on personally? And do you have the capability to do so? And that's okay to say, like, maybe it's not for me. Maybe this isn't the company I want to work for, but this is something I want to do eventually.
Yeah, I think that's great. Aleka, did you have something?
No, I was just thinking to the shift of yourself, how sometimes the outside expectations, for instance, myself, right? I'm going through the shift of a singular thing, but I'm used to and I'm known for being everywhere, always doing all the things, being able to be everyone for everyone or everything for everyone. When you make that shift internally inside, I'm going to be on this one lane. How do you get everybody else on board and also say to yourself too, this is just like a rhetorical question, right? How do you also say to yourself, okay, I'm in this lane. Everybody else needs to know I'm in this lane, but I'm also known for being in every other single lane, right? Yeah. How do you bring that part in? And that's kind of
from experience, I'll tell you this, you have to start just putting it out there in the world. You just have to start, when I changed to on-trade strategy, people were like, they didn't know me that. They just knew me from mixology and whatever, didn't realize I had made a career change. I went to working for Anheuser-Busch and I became a global manager, which focused on strategy and education. And then when I wanted to do that as a full-time career, as for myself, presenting it to brands, I realized all the brands that knew me beforehand, they just didn't see that. And then we've been doing this, like the brand education, like until I started doing this show, I don't think people made that connection for me that I do brand ambassador education and I create programs and stuff like that. So you just have to just start putting it out there. Find the thing you want to put out there in the world and just start putting it out there constantly. And eventually people will make the connection.
Well, and start saying no to things, right?
Things that don't serve you well. Is it raining where you are, Daniela? Because it's pouring where I am.
It is. It's starting to sprinkle just a touch.
Okay.
But Aleka, I love that. Saying no. That's what, it's been programmed. It's been programmed in my brain. I grew up in Detroit, super blue collar family. It was, grind until you're dead, pretty much. Mm-hmm. Like work as hard as possible. Go. Don't take time for yourself. Don't worry about vacations. Like
say yes to every opportunity.
Exactly. Yeah. Like take the meeting. Take the meeting, but also understand what is the meeting. What is the meeting and take the meeting. You don't always have to say yes to, what comes after the meeting. And I think it was when, with my last, working with the last supplier, I got the opportunity to start working on education, mixology, and rewriting some really amazing programs. I was like, oh, to do my job, I don't need to be at every single bar and every single party. Do I want to? Sure. But going to bed at 11, chef's kiss. It's a game changer. Like last night I was trying to watch the basketball game and I was like, I have to go to bed. I am exhausted. Like I'm going to finish this game and then I'm out. Never, sitting on with friends and colleagues and they're like, stay for one more. And I was like, I'm really good at saying no, thank you to one more.
No, that's a skill set. Believe me,
yes.
It's being able to say good nights and being able to, I find if I know what my day is the next day, like if I know what I have in my schedule and I know what I have to achieve before I actually leave my house and my office, gets me to go home. I'm like, actually, I realize that I actually have to get up at like 6:30 because I have to like write this thing before I have to leave my house at 10 to go to a meeting or whatever it is. So But saying no to also your bosses sometimes like, or requests from the distributor. It's like, hey, I need you to do this thing. And Aleka and I, we were talking about this yesterday. It's like, is this really the best use of my time? Like, I'm like, hey, I don't, I want to be a team player, but okay, so I have these other projects going on, and then having something in your court, you can be like, hey, listen, this request was put in for me. I'm always up for the challenge, but I have other things going on, and this is my solution. I think they could use this person, or we could hire a promotional model, or whatever it is, because one time I had to break it down to my boss. I just said, do you know how much you pay me? Do you really want me to spend my time in this liquor store, which is not even a good liquor store, like knowing how much an hour, like my salary breaks down to, like when you could just hire a promotional model for $75? And they were like, yeah, that's a good point. I'm like, this person called me because they just know I'm in the first person on their speed dial. And like, I get it. And I'm flattered, but it's not the best use of my time. And they were like, yeah, good point. I'm like, yeah. And sometimes you have to break it down.
Absolutely.
All right. So before it starts raining on Daniella.
I see it's like looming, but the breeze feels really nice.
Yeah.
I'm
it's here. I can hear the rain outside my window. And I actually got text from the boat saying I don't have to be in for another, 2 hours because it's raining.
Nice.
So all right, so both of you like said intention, but recurrent. Okay, let's talk about it. Okay, working with distributor, right? Because that is a big part of everybody's job, right? So it's a significant part of your job. So and Danielle, you also with the barrel program, how do you make it work with this? Like, how do you work with a distributor and kind of build relationships with them and get them on board with the barrel program?
So when I first started, I made the mistake of making myself too available to our distributor partners with the other brands I worked on. Because they were like, well, you're the cherry on top. And I was like, but I want to be out. And I coming to New York and not, having visited for 7 years and then living here, you're just like, oh, I don't really know where anything is. And it can be insanely terrifying. I'm not even going to pretend like for a second it wasn't. Man, you should have seen me my first day on the trains. I was just like this. But so I was like, oh, I'll just hook up with these distributor guys. No, they ran me ragged. They had me doing the things that were not worth my time. So what you have to do is say no. You have to oftentimes explain to them, like, this is my role. Oh, I'm getting poured on. But what is nice is because of the way that our barrel program works, like I'm the keeper of it. Like I know how many barrels we get per quarter, so they have to come to me. They can't just run around and be like, I sold a barrel here, here, and here. It doesn't work like that. They have to send in an application that I have to approve at the end of the day. So it really gives me a lot of onus, like in the program and the account itself. And that's something that Beam Suntory throughout all of our segments and our brands, that's something that they made sure that like we believe that, or they believe that the people who they've hired are the right people to really be in charge of some of these like very influential programs. But moving forward with the distributors now, it's deal directly with the people that manages the sales team is always my goal. Like take those guys out. Let's get to know each other. When you need me, give me a call. We'll chat about it, and I'll make sure that it makes sense that I'm a part of it. And it took me a long time, like a year and a half, where I was just like, I'll do whatever. And then I was like, no. Now I've got this. Build relationships, be kind. Being kind, I think, was a big thing. Bring coffee, and sometimes it's not always going to be the right account. There are going to be times where they take you someplace and you're like, I'm not really sure why I'm here, but you know what? You take that L and you know that they saw potential, and applaud them for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And finding, I think, what is the person in charge of it, because every distributor has different titles. It used to be general manager, but now it's field sales manager. I've heard is the right field sales manager. Yes.
For Southern Glazers, they're now area managers.
Area managers. Yeah. Because it's always different. So finding that person and finding the right one that identifies with the accounts that you want to work in, because every sales team is different. So there's multiple different sales groups, and some have every single account on the sun, and some have very specific ones that are going to work with your program, and taking them out definitely goes a long way. Aleka, we were talking about this yesterday. You have ways that you kind of bond with people. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, very similar to what Daniela said, you know, a lunch and a coffee can go a very long way, as well as I'm in San Francisco. And so parking is very, very limited, as well as in New York. So fun things like, you know, parking gift cards and just like listening to people once again and connecting. You know, Daniela hit on, you know, maybe taking that appointment with someone you don't think is actually going to hit this time around. You'd be surprised a year and a half later, that person's calling you up and they're like, hey, I used to open up 3 more liquor stores. I know you were so nice to me. How can we start this relationship over again? So really just connecting to the human that person is, because at the end of the day, we sell a product, but our products are rooted in hospitality. We're going into restaurants all the time. We're dealing with people. So if you're not a people person, you're in the wrong business, you know? And I have a very, I'm fortunate enough to where I've dealt with so many different type of restaurant jobs. I've dealt with children with special needs. I've done the whole spectrum of people to really know that if you connect with them, you know, I don't say like your goals are going to get made, but they end up wanting to work harder for you. You know, they're going to pull that bottle of Denizen over their competitor if I'm texting them every day and being like, hey, go Italy, they just won, because I know you love that team, you know? So I think really connecting and listening and giving them the resources that they possibly, or they may not get from other people is where I found a lot of success. Investing in people.
I think that's, oh, we just lost her. No, I think that's a really great point. I mean, one of the things, besides taking them out to lunch or whatever it was, and I didn't know that in the beginning. Like, I was like, why does this person expect me to pay for their lunch? Like, you know, I just wasn't like in tune. It was my first time working with salespeople. And then I started learning like, oh, this is, yeah, I should just do this. And this is a good thing to do. You know, and they will build that bond. But I also started realizing that finding out what their goals were as well. Like for other brands, sometimes I would be like, okay, so I'm doing this menu. What other things do you need to see on this menu that you have your goals on as well? So I will do 60% are going to be, there she is. And you're back.
I don't know what happened. There was like a crack of lightning and then it just dropped out.
As long as you're still here, you didn't get hit by the crack of lightning.
Yeah.
No.
We were talking about, you know, like other ways of bonding with the distributor. And I was saying, you know, some of the ways is also, you know, besides buying them lunch, I didn't know, like when I first started, I was like, I had no idea that I should do that. And then it took me a few times to realize that. But also when I'm working in accounts, when I used to create menus, I would also ask them what goals they had on other brands besides my own, to make sure because I was the mixologist for Diageo. So I would be like, all right, so what other things? So I would take, like, I was like, I need 5 drinks, you know, this 10-minute, what 2 brands do you need? And I even sometimes would ask the account, I would say, I know you work with other suppliers. Like, who do you need to maintain some relationships with? And they'd be like, I need a Hendrix drink and I need a, you know, this drink. So I would create them cocktail. And I would do the menu and I would send people from Hendrix sometimes be like, you're welcome. You just got a, you know, a menu placement. But it helped the distributor sales rep knew I was a team player and they knew I understood, like, it's not just about my brands, but it's about theirs. It's about theirs. And like, how do we help? And the account, most of all, it's like, how do we build together to help the account? It's not just about, hey, look at Daniella. Daniela's going to just like,
so sidebar, growing up in Detroit, summer storms were like super crazy. So I like have like storm PTSD.
Oh, you poor thing.
But I'm in a secure place, so we're good.
Okay, good.
I think that's a great, like, talking about lunch and like another thing they don't teach you about when you first start is your budgets. How do you use them?
Mm-hmm.
Like you, especially coming from like the bar side of things, you're just like, oh, I'm gonna use the least amount of budget and achieve the most. And at the end of the year, they're like, no, we're gonna take your money away now. Yeah. Like, so that's always a fun thing. Like, go out to eat, take that car, wine and dine.
Yeah, no, it's a really good point about using your budgets. I mean, obviously you shouldn't go over your budgets. That's a big thing. And you should definitely track your expenses. But it is about, you're right. If you don't use up all your budget, they will take it from, they're like, oh, you don't need as much, so I'm going to take some of it away. So it's really important for you to know that. Like, use every freaking dollar. And then also, like, I'd be that person. I remember being in the Hamptons doing events, And there I am, my entire Diageo team, we're at the Diddy party at his house. And I'm driving a car around, like, because I had to drive to, like, another event. And my guy, the CMO looked at me and goes, Elaine, why don't you have a car service? And I'm like, I didn't think I should expense that. And I just didn't know. Like, it just seems so decadent.
Yeah.
He's like, you should be driving around the Hamptons Road in the dark and, like, and going to different events. And I'm like, well, I didn't want to waste the money. Like, you have an expense account for a reason. So
Yes.
it's that kind of people like, hey, this is what I want to do. If you don't feel comfortable, then once you feel comfortable, then you can do it. But I don't know, Aleka, do you have anything?
No, absolutely. And it's those little things. I'm an Emily postgraduate, so like little things like curating some thank you cards, sending baby gifts when a new account opens. My thing is I like to give like candles that have the gemstones in there. Things that people just shows that they're really just they're thought about after the sale.
No, I think that's really important. I used to create my friend, one of my other brand ambassadors taught me how to he used to send out Christmas baskets, like holiday baskets. So you would see me, my kitchen would be stacked with, I make really awesome chocolate chip cookies. I would make homemade chocolate chip cookies by the hundreds and then like batch them up. And then I would have baskets and I would run around like dropping them off to all towns during like the week of the holidays. And that went a long way. People would be like, if I didn't the next year, I remember one year when I wasn't, they're like, we missed your baskets.
Yeah.
But they remember that stuff. And I think it's really, and also give it to the distributor, give it to your favorite.
Yes,
rep.
Absolutely.
And don't forget the warehouse guys too at the distributor.
Oh yeah.
Those guys literally keep us moving.
That's
So
a great point.
A foot long sub goes a long way with those guys.
All right. So I know so that Daniella doesn't get too wet out there. I want to talk about two last things. It's basically what gives you the most anxiety about your job? Because every brand ambassador has anxiety, right? Like you have like FOMO, or you have not FOMO, but like sometimes, you have imposter syndrome. You have like sometimes there's a lot of things that can sometimes cause anxiety. And I find it helpful if we all share. Aleka, I'll start with you.
Okay, yeah. Doing it all, right? I get a lot of anxiety of how do I maintain this list, work at a high caliber, but also have time for myself. One thing I've been really trying to keep in line since I moved to California is when I'm at home and I come in on the field, like I really want that to be my home time. I don't want to work until midnight emailing. And so being able to split my time and who gets the most of it gives me a lot of anxiety sometimes, and it's a little bit hard. And also getting worked up about it, all these fun programs that we do, where you pitch something, you have it all together, you can execute it. They say yes, and then you have all the parts, and then they're like, actually, never mind. So those can kind of be a little deterring. But won't be me if I didn't spin the positive part of it. But I think once again, it also helps me, even those things they're challenging. It's the universe's way, I feel like, telling me, okay, what's really important? What do you need to focus on?
Yeah. So, I mean, have you identified anything that helps you or stay organized? Like for yourself?
So the recent thing, because that was my huge struggle, to be honest, I'm so annoyed that it's been in front of me the whole time, is my Outlook calendar. And when I say that, I put all of my sales notes in there and my boss can see it and everything, as opposed to having to do on my notepad or start an email to myself for my recap. Everything is just, Outlook is amazing. And then you can also create a Word document within that and then send it. So just figuring out how to streamline that process, because we had like an app where we logging things in, and we had this and we had that. And I'm just like, how can I streamline? Mm-hmm. So that's been a heaven sent. And then it keeps you in line with what you've tracked, what days you were there. It's been my best friend.
Yeah, no, putting everything in Outlook at the end of the day, I always find it's like, because you forget where you've been.
Or even right then, I plan everything, and I walk into a store, I make that right there. I was in this store, boom.
Yep. No, I think that's really important. And Daniella, for you?
There are two things that like make my heart flutter just a little bit, and that's going to be getting my expense reports in on time, which I have done consistently for 2 years. I hate being late to meetings, and I also like turning anything in. And I would say for New York specifically, like putting together an entire event, getting all those details set up, and then the fear of not having anyone show up is something that it would be my two biggest anxieties. But I love using my Outlook as is my saving grace. On top of that, I also use an amazing app called To Do, which is connected directly with Outlook, and that's something that's been incredibly helpful.
Yeah, I use an app called Todoist. Todoist, and I didn't know it connected to my, and I love it. My Todoist app, because I'm constantly thinking oh, I need to do this, and then you can schedule it in for your days, and I move it and then keep it scheduled and keep my top list. Yeah, your 3 most important tasks. It's that's the thing. I always make a list the night before. What are the 3 things? If I only do those 3 things, that I'm going to get done today, my day is good. And sometimes just a little piece of the puzzle. All right, so we'll wrap it up because Daniella's going to get wet.
It's raining cats and dogs out here.
It is. All right, so the last question I'm going to ask is, I always say, if you could share a lesson you've learned on the job that you'd like to share with somebody else so they don't make the same mistake, or just something you just learned. You're just if everybody knew this, it would just save them so much anxiety and time, or they wouldn't get in trouble just by this something I learned that I wish everybody knew. Daniella, go ahead. You go first.
Yeah. So I guess for me, the biggest thing is you don't work in a silo. Your colleagues, they become part of your family. Work together as a team. We're all going to bring in different attributes from our different life experiences and our different work experiences. You don't have to be so, I've got it, I don't need any help. Ask for help. Depend on the family that does exist as other brand ambassadors, and ask a lot of questions. It's not about knowing the answer. It's about finding the solution, and you're going to have to ask for help. And that is always my biggest thing. Lean on your colleagues, ask for help.
Yeah, and I think that's a great one, because that might is humbling for yourself, because you don't want anybody to know you don't know the answer, you don't have it. So it is, it's a hard lesson to learn, but it's definitely such a great point. It's there's your team, everybody has a different perspective, everybody has a different experience, and it's okay if they know more. That's why you're asking them. Aleka, for you?
I couldn't have said it better myself. I have all the things I could say, you could research, make sure you research, make sure you do that. That's great, but ask for help, and it's okay to not be okay. And I say that because we see all of these other people in these positions, that they have these big budgets, or they're out in a bat jet setting, and it looks like they have it all together, but you'd be surprised of how many people are crackling under that surface. So it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to take time for yourself, because the work will always be there. And it's okay to miss out on an event, because there will always be another event. Absolutely. So if I could say my biggest advice, is think about yourself and how you want to see yourself in this industry. Put yourself first, and then everything else will kind of fall into it.
No, I think that's great words of advice. There is always another event, and the work will always be there. And it's okay to take time off. And I say this, it's every show, and I'll give you this advice: schedule the same vacation time every year. If you have 2 weeks, take your 2 weeks, a week here and a week here, but just take it the same time every single year, whether it's during shutdown or whatever it is. And that way it's done. It's you don't have to think about it. You just know, I always take off that week in April. I always take off that week in October. Your boss knows, and you can plan so far in advance. But you do need to take that time for yourself, and it's okay. If you had a big night the night before, sometimes you sort of I'm not going to answer my emails until noon because I need a little sleep, because I've been in bed. I've been out really late.
Absolutely.
Opportunity, but you should. It's okay. All right. Before Daniella gets soaked, we're going to let her go. I think she also froze. Daniella, are you still there? Nope. I think she froze. Well, I want to say from Daniella and to Daniella, it was really lovely having both of you ladies here. So many great lessons, and this will be up on our Facebook page for the next 2 weeks, and it lives on YouTube under Celebrate the Brand Ambassador. So anybody tuning in who missed anything, you can always find it there. And it was really great to see you again.
Yes, it was great to see you. Enjoy the rest of your day. Hope you don't get too wet.
Me too. All right. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.